The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we'll talk about CONCACAF Champions League. We'll talk about Austin FC making roster moves already, and we'll cover our over-under predictions from the beginning of the season with our friend Marcelo. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. Landon, I'm going to ask you a question I asked you about 2 minutes ago in real time because, people were worried. Like, you had a bit of a rough week last week, and you went on vacation. And how did those things kind of combine? How are you doing? How are you doing now? Like, I saw a picture or two. It seems like you eventually got into the mood, but I don't think you had like an amazing start to your vacation.
Yeah, so I had a dental procedure done it's been 2 weeks ago now, and going into it was like, oh, it'll be a few days, you'll feel a little rough, but then you should be fine. And like pushing a week after the fact, I am like unable to eat. I'm like just in a really rough spot. And so thank you to Kevin Morris for stepping in kind of last minute and filling in on the show last week. But I was kind of in a bad place. I was scheduled to fly to Mexico on Tuesday. And luckily we had bought refundable tickets because we thought maybe Austin FC would be playing in the MLS Cup final. And so we had refundable plane tickets for that. And I thought, although we knew we weren't going to have to use them for the game, I kind of thought for a moment, like, I'm going to have to use this refundable ticket because I can't get on an airplane right now because I'm in too much pain. But got there, was like on a bunch of pain pills the first couple of days. But then by like Wednesday evening, Thursday, I was sipping margaritas and eating tacos and everything was great. So the recovery from that point was actually quite quick, but I was in not a great place for a few days there.
Well, I'm happy to have you like back and happy. And where in Mexico did you go?
San Jose del Cabo. So it's like a beach resort thing, it's a thing that I have been dismissive of in the past. And I think as I get a little bit older and whenever I go on vacation, like just sitting down and doing nothing sounds pretty good. I really, really enjoyed this Mexico beach resort, which is a thing I never thought I would say.
Yeah, I would like to be, I agree with you. Just like laying on the beach and having people bring me things all day long is pretty great.
Yeah.
When it comes to vacation, because I feel like we all work hard enough in everyday life that like an actual relaxing vacation where maybe you don't have to put in a lot of work is the way to go. So I'm on board with that for sure. So one thing you didn't get to talk about last week is sort of, your quick thoughts on this year and how it went and how it ended and like how you felt about it all.
Yeah, man, it's a super disappointing end to it. Like, I knew we would have to lose at some point, or like the likelihood was high that we would lose at some point, but I didn't want it to happen the way that it did. That being said, we can't be anything but happy about this season on the whole, right? Like, it was excellent. As we'll hear the second half of this show when we do our over-unders with Marcelo, we very much underestimated this team and how far we thought they could go and how well that they could do. And so all of that was excellent. And I think as we get into the rest of the show and we're covering these roster moves and kind of what the offseason is going to look like, oftentimes when you see a team kind of make a run like this, there's a way you can build a team that people will call like the win now mentality, where you kind of go all for broke and make moves that are going to maybe just be like a 1 year thing in the hopes that you can win right now when it counts, but maybe sacrificing the long-term sustainability of your team and of your roster build. And that's not at all what this Austin team was. And so looking forward, I'm actually really encouraged by this, how much flexibility and opportunity there is to make this team even better going into next year.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, when you look at the sort of the core strength of the team is going to be there for a long time, and there are positions that like we haven't gotten maximum value out of, or either will like the players that are in those spots will improve, or we can find different players. And I feel like this project is set up for long-term success, which I don't know that 1 year ago anybody would have thought, right? Like Claudio and Josh had a very much like we have a system where we know what we're doing it, like trust this kind of thing, and maybe we didn't. And, that has come to bear, now after the second year, that it seems like there's a lot of good teams in the West. So maybe we don't finish second in the West next year. But like as far as just the underlying strength of the team, I think we're in a really good spot.
Yeah. So we are now officially in off-season mode. I think maybe here in a bit we'll go through some of the dates, but the first pertinent date is
today, November 7th
trade window. We're recording this on Monday. There's a 2-day trade window that opened today, and Austin FC had an announcement in that trade window, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and it's one that had been rumored, and I think it's a really good move for everybody all the way around. So Austin traded Jared Stroud to St. Louis City, all in caps, which annoys me. If anybody who knows me on Twitter understands. So Jared Stroud went to St. Louis. Austin receives $100,000 in GAM. Stroud spent the 2021 and 2022 seasons in Austin, making 27 appearances, 13 starts. Those are all in 21, right? Did he make a single appearance in 22?
I believe he made some appearances early on this year, but let me double check that. He played in five games for 41 minutes.
Okay, a solid 41 minutes this year. But I mean, good for Jared Stroud. Hopefully, he seems like the kind of guy that contributes to an expansion squad. So it's a good place for him to be. Like, he's a nice guy as far as we can tell. He has something that we didn't need. The guy can run fast. Hopefully, it will help St. Louis out. And I guess he's one of their first 2 players too. I think they acquired him and one other player today. So they're off to a start before the expansion draft, which comes up next week, I believe.
Yeah, they do have some other players on the roster already because they've been playing in Next Pro.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
already. So they have a fairly fleshed out roster already. But this is great business from Austin FC. This is a guy who I kind of assumed would be on a 1-year contract anyway. And talking about the front office doing a good job for them to have the foresight of like, okay, maybe he turns it back around, but worst case scenario, if we give him a longer contract, he's already cheap, and then maybe we can flip him for assets, which they did. And so $100,000 is not a ton of allocation money, but it's pretty good for a guy who made 5 appearances and played 41 minutes this year.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully they can turn it around and do something with the other allocation money they're going to have through some of the moves that we can talk about. I guess right now, like there's a pile of money to do something.
Yeah. So let's get into the other roster decisions that were made. Do you want to kind of read through the details of this one?
Yeah, let's go through this. And I like up front, I'd have to say that there's none of these that necessarily surprised me. So we knew that Austin had several players on contract options. So the ones that were exercised for 2023 were Brad Stuver and Charlie Asensio. Hector Jimenez was out of contract, so he will not be on the club. And then Austin declined the contract options for the following 5 players: Danny Houston, Freddie Kleeman, Felipe Martins, Will Pulisic, and Andrew Tarbell. And then also Washington Caruso went back on loan. Austin declined to exercise that option. Like, are there any of those that you were? Let's go with this 2 different ways. Are any of those that you were surprised by?
No, not particularly. No.
And are there any of those moves that you're disappointed by? And I feel like there's one that a lot of the Austin FC fan base is disappointed by, but I would love your take on that.
Yeah, I think you're probably referring to Felipe, and like on a human level, yeah, I would be sad if Felipe's not on the team next year, just because he had, decent production on the field for like the role that he was playing. I don't think he was great, and so like from a soccer perspective, I think he's replaceable. But from a camaraderie and like leadership perspective, I would love to have him on the team next year. So just because they did not pick up these options doesn't necessarily mean that these guys are completely gone. And so what do you think the likelihood is of Felipe or any of these guys coming back on money? And I'll give my my theory about Felipe first and let you
Okay.
take the other one. So I've heard a lot of people saying like he's already on a supplemental roster spot, like senior minimum salary. So why wouldn't you pick him up again? And my theory is that on this option year, that Felipe Martin's a guy who had made quite a bit of money in this league, has been pretty successful in this league, took a flyer on Austin and said, okay, I'll take this supplemental spot for this year, but my option year, I want it to be at a higher number, hoping that he could earn that higher number for his option year. So I think it's entirely possible that that's the case. And so Austin declined that option in hopes of maybe bringing him back on that supplemental spot if he's wanting to do that. If he wants more money, he's welcome to go look for it elsewhere. But if he wants to stay in Austin, he needs to stay on the same money. Do you think that's a believable scenario?
That seems totally plausible. And if I was Austin, that's a position I would take, because I don't know if there's anything he did on the field that would show that he should earn a lot more money.
And more importantly, a senior roster spot.
That's true. And a senior roster spot, which we can go back and look at. Actually, I don't know how many we have left at this point exactly, and I guess some of it depends upon what happens with Tomas Pochettino. But yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed, but I think it's your theory is definitely believable in terms of why we wouldn't bring him back. That it has to be something other than like bringing him back on the same money in the same slot on the roster. The other one, I was a little bit surprised, I guess, about Brad Stuver having his option extended just in terms of there not being another deal made. Like, what do you think about that? Do you think there's like a deal in the future, or what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, MLS is always super cryptic about these things, and so I read absolutely nothing into this, and I think it just means like he has a contract still. And that's any other details may or may not be revealed at one point in the future. Maybe 6 months from now, who knows? But he's going to be on the team next year, and that's confirmed at this point.
Yeah, I can't remember who we read that about, but like somebody signed a roster extension this year, and they actually had like the years and some of the terms, and we were both shocked by the fact that they published it. I don't remember which player that was, but we did. And
also, like Adrian Heath signed an extension as Minnesota's coach like 8 months before they announced it, or something like that. So like MLS is weird. It's whatever.
Who knows?
I don't know.
He'll be back. So that leaves Austin with the players going out, the players staying. Austin has 22 players signed for next year, and at some point we should like figure out how many have senior roster versus supplemental versus all the other spots. But we're not going to do that right now on the fly. So it leaves a lot of open positions, and hopefully a lot of open money when you look at. I mean, between Huson and Tarbell, that's what, $1 million between the two of those that's available.
Yeah, depending on how you do the math, and because like the guys who are on supplemental contracts, they're getting a salary, of course, but they don't necessarily count towards your salary budget, and so like the math is a little fuzzy, but depending on how you're counting that, it was anywhere between like $1.75 and $2 million in roster space and or allocation money freed up, which is like that's great for like guys who are not really contributing to your team all that much this year. So we talk about the flexibility to go out and improve this team, and that money's gonna, if used well, it's gonna go a long way.
Yeah, and you hope between like using that well and getting some more development out of some of the some players or the players that are around and continue going, that again, like the foundation seems like really strong in terms of what Austin is building. So I think it's
I wanted to ask about some of the other guys too. So two others that I could potentially see coming back. Hector Jimenez, like I don't really think there's a spot for him. I think I can envision a player that would be of better use of even the like probably the much lower money that he would be willing to take at this point. And so I don't really see Hector Jimenez coming back. And that one pains me a little bit too. He just seems like such a good dude. If I would imagine he's pretty well liked in the locker room. So I'll be sad to see him go, but I don't really see him coming back. Andrew Tarbell is one that I'm a bit interested in, because you would guess that he might be willing to take a bit of a pay cut, but is he okay with definitely being the number 2? I would like, as far as like profile goes, like who you're looking for a number 2 keeper. Like if you can get Andrew Tarbell at lower money, like maybe you go for him and like let him and Damian Loss, as Loss is getting a little bit older and developing a bit more, maybe competing for that spot. But I'm guessing Andrew Tarbell wants to go somewhere and play. Yeah, if he can.
I would agree with that. I think that's why he's not going to come back. I do think that in the absence of Andrew Tarbell, Austin FC needs some other option at the backup keeper than Damian Loss, like somebody with some kind of league experience. But I don't think that Tarbell's that guy. I think Tarbell thought that he was going to come here and get the starting job, and I think he wants to have an opportunity somewhere else. Given, like, I mean, he started more games than, well, not now, but like going into last year, he started more games in his career than Brad Stuver. So yeah, I think he feels like if he's ever going to be a starting keeper in this league, like now is his time, and he doesn't want to come back and sit on the bench. And he would clearly come back and sit on the bench in Austin. But I think there are other clubs where at least he'll have a shot or a puncher's chance of being a starter. So I would expect Austin to bring somebody in. Like, I can't imagine that we just roll with Damian Loss, but I don't think that person's going to be Andrew Tarbell.
Yeah, I could see, I think depending on how they see Damian Loss right now, if they think he's anywhere close to being a reliable number 2, then maybe they just go with him and maybe try to find a keeper in the super draft or something like that. Or maybe like this is where you get maybe a cheap free agent or something like that. Like, don't give up resources for a player, but you can find somebody that can slot into that third spot. If they don't think that Loss can be the guy, then that's where maybe you have to look at spending some money and bring someone in. But I'm kind of hoping, since they did spend money to bring Loss in and brought him in from, was it Fulham's second team?
Right.
That somewhere in England, I think it was Fulham. But anyway, like they went out and got him and paid money to bring him in. So you would hope that he could be maybe pushing for that second spot this year. So Freddie Kleeman, I think at this point, it's safe to say they're probably not going to bring him in. He was already on supplemental spot. Will Pulisic, same thing. I think they're both gone. But Danny Houston, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had there. I'm guessing at his age and with his performance the last couple of years, he would be willing to take a pay cut. But if, let's say, you could get him down to the acceptable number, whatever that number is, would you bring Danny Houston back?
Well, the acceptable number being for, like, well, I think it depends on what that number is. I mean,
no, let's just say it is. Okay. It's the acceptable number.
Whatever my number is.
Yeah.
Do you think? No, I don't bring him back. I don't know if he offers that much. I feel like with the way that Moussa Djité has developed and Maxi coming back, I feel like you have like that sort of variety in styles and strikers where like your third striker doesn't add a lot there. And I would rather like find a young guy who's kind of a project to see what the post Maxi era would look like, because that's coming soon too. To fill that spot in, as opposed to bringing Danny back and getting like what you can get out of him. Do you have a different opinion?
No, I totally agree. Like I think you, like, there's a reality where you could get him for cheaper, but I don't know that at any price it really makes a lot of sense. And so I agree with you. I think, we should move on from him and bring in a younger guy if we're okay with the two guys we have now being the competitors for starters, or bring in someone that you think can be the starter and have Djité and Urruti competing for the second spot. I would be okay with either of those approaches, but I don't think Danny Houston moves
any of those
needles enough to be kept on at really any price. What other dates do we have to look forward to here, Jeremiah?
So coming up at the end of this week, we have the MLS expansion draft. St. Louis City will be selecting from players on the 11th, and Austin should not have anybody selected because Mackenzie Gaines went to Charlotte last year, so we're exempt from that. November 14th is the deadline for player options next Monday, which we expected to be a big day, but it turned out not to be because Austin made other choices today. So I think the big thing after this will be the opening of free agency, which is on November 16th. This is interleague free agency. And then followed by December 21st is the Super Draft. One of the things that we did was went back and looked through sort of the off-season schedule in terms from last year in terms of player acquisition to see where we might expect players to move. And Austin did not have a lot during like any of these dates, honestly, until we got into like the full-on off-season. So the first player we had was Ethan Finley, right? The first player that we brought in.
I think that's right.
In December. Like we re-signed Jared Stroud. We exercised the option on John Kolmanich, but then we added Finley, Arruti, Valencia like in December, January. So I wouldn't expect a lot of things to happen, I guess, is sort of the note for the offseason anytime soon for Austin FC, unless we're fundamentally going to change from last year. I mean, do you see us, even the interleague free agents were not that early on during the season.
Yeah, I mean, they technically could start making moves, but like in a lot of those cases, I'm guessing these guys, at least the guys worth going after in free agency, are probably talking to multiple clubs. And so it's not going to happen immediately. It will take some time. So yeah, and with the reentry stuff, I looked back at last year's reentry draft. I think there's 2 guys that like played real minutes for teams. Jan Gregus was taken, and Brian Acosta were both taken in the reentry draft. So those are the only 2 guys. I think like maybe 5 or 6 total were taken, and those 2 are the only ones that played a lot. So yeah, it really, for Austin anyway, it really is the free agency thing. And then, like you said, that could still end up taking a little bit of time. But then after that, a month or so after that, we have the Super Draft coming up, which is probably going to look different than the last couple of Super Drafts that we've had.
Well, Austin will not be selecting nearly as high up in the Super Draft as Austin has done in the past, for sure.
Yeah, we're going to be on the end of even the first round, where the chance of that player making a difference in your team is pretty low. And so there's still a possibility that if there's someone in that draft they really want, and I mean, I wouldn't be mad if Claudio was trying to game the draft, just because he's picked well so far. We think Keller is still likely to at least be a professional soccer player in MLS a couple of years from now, which is pretty good for the draft. And then Danny Pereira has been fantastic, all things considered. So they could trade up, but like with the pick that we're going to have naturally, it's pretty unlikely to get anybody that's going to really affect this team this season anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's possible. There's a lot of clubs that don't value those picks and don't value the Super Draft. So maybe Claudio can make something happen. I think it's probably our greatest opportunity there. So I guess the other news we have here is we had the CONCACAF Champions League draw today, and I guess let's go through. You want to go through that fairly quickly, sort of what it is, how we qualified, what's going to happen. I think the most interesting thing is our opponent, which is super weird, which we can get into. But first of all, I guess CONCACAF Champions League is a league that teams from across the region qualify for, professional clubs. It runs concurrently with the 2023 MLS soccer regular season. So we will play our first round matches. So it's a 2-legged draw, away March 7th and 9th, then at home March 14th to 16th. And then it's a round of 16 bracket. So if we qualify, the quarterfinals are April 4th to 6th and 11th to 13th. The semifinals are April 25th to 27th and May 2nd to 4th. And the final will be May 31st and June 4th of next year. So
and so this does go
tournament.
straight to knockout round, which I think is maybe
right.
They used to have groups like a group stage, but in 2018 or so, they moved to just straight knockout rounds. And so, yeah, we'll be playing to move on from the very first date there, which is pretty exciting. But we had the draw tonight on Monday, and it's a little bit more complicated, or maybe like a little bit more up in the air than a lot of these draws are. So we drew Violette AC, which is a team from Haiti. They qualified by winning the Caribbean Club Championship, which is kind of like a little mini regional tournament that they played in. From anything that can be found online, it looks like that was the last game that they played, was in the Caribbean Club Championship in
when was that
May.
game? Yeah, I was going to say, Landon, when was that game? In May. Nobody can find that they played since then.
So if, for those that don't know, Haiti is like in kind of a bad way right now. Like they're having a really rough go of things, both politically, from a health perspective, from an economic perspective. It like things are not great in Haiti right now. And so it is extremely unlikely that we would actually go and play them in Haiti. If they were able to host a game, it would likely be in the Dominican Republic. And that's according to folks like John Arnold, who he writes for the Striker about FC Dallas. But if you don't know, he's also like maybe the like leading CONCACAF expert, at least in English.
I think you can
maybe
give him
there's
that.
some
I think you can give him like the leading. I mean, what's this newsletter called?
getting CONCACAF.
Getting CONCACAF, of course. So like the guy knows more about it than anybody else. And yeah, he did a lot of coverage of just the general like political and life situation in Haiti leading up to this.
Yeah, so it's also worth noting that last year a Haitian team qualified and was supposed to play the New England Revolution in the first round. The players were unable to get visas to enter the United States, and so they actually ended up forfeiting their first round. And so that is always a possibility as well. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. It would be a shame. I mean, like if you're looking at it from a competitive standpoint, it'd be like, oh yeah, Austin moves on straight to the second round. But like, I don't want to do it that way. Like I want to actually play the games. Otherwise, like what's the point of being in it if you're not getting to play games and like this really special competition and go to places you're never going to go again and have never been before. Like I would be a little bit sad if it got canceled, both for Austin and for Violette. Like it's just going to be a special moment for both of the teams. And so hopefully we end up making it happen, but who knows where exactly that's going to be.
And I feel like an away leg in the Dominican Republic to open this was be just about the best possible introduction to CONCACAF Champions League that anybody from Austin could have, because it's like a peak. And hopefully if that happens, the stadium has a track around the outside of it. Because like when I think about...
Oh, you know it will. You know it will.
When I think about CONCACAF Champions League, I think about games in Central America where it's raining a lot and there's a track surrounding the field. And that's just the way it goes.
And the away fans are going absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Or the home fans.
Home fans. Yeah. Exactly. So one thing... do you want to talk about? I was going to say, you want to talk about how we qualified? Because like we did not win the Supporters Shield, or the Eastern Conference, or the Western Conference, or the U.S. Open Cup, or the Canadian Championship, but somehow we still made it in.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on the show a couple of weeks ago, but the winners of each conference qualify, and then the winners of MLS Cup qualify. And then the winner of the U.S. Open Cup qualifies, and then the winners of the Canadian Cup qualifies. And so I think we said at one point there was like 4 or 5 teams that if they won MLS Cup, then because we finished second in the West, that it would fall to us. And by the end of the semifinals of MLS Cup, we knew that we were in already because all 4 of the teams, all but New York. Right? So if Philadelphia won, we're in. If LAFC won, we're in. If we won, we're in. And so the only way that at that point that we weren't going to make it in was if NYCFC won MLS Cup. That didn't happen. And so we're in as the second place team in the West.
And I think one of the most interesting wrinkles in this for me is that Club de Foot Montreal would have got in ahead of us because they were ahead of us in the table, but apparently due to the quirks of CONCACAF Champions League qualifying, because they're not a team based in the U.S., we got that spot too. Because otherwise, Montreal would have taken that spot, but I think Vancouver got the only one out of Canada.
Correct. Yeah, because they won the Canadian Cup, and so I believe they're going to make it with the expanded CONCACAF Champions League starting next season. It will be easier for Canadian teams to qualify through MLS competition, which I think is fair. Like, it's it kind of sucks for for Montreal that they did so well and like earned that spot and don't get to go because they didn't win in a knockout cup competition. So I'm glad that they're going to get the chance next year, but for this year, I'll take it. I guess this is worth asking. Is it a good thing that Austin's in this tournament?
Well, Kevin and I talked a little bit about this last week, and I don't know that to be the case but there's a busier schedule than there has ever been. Between the Leagues Cup, with the U.S. Open Cup, Austin's not that deep, and it's a really congested schedule. I think it helps that it is straight to knockouts, and there's not group play or anything. And I think it helps that we're playing a team out of Haiti that may or may not actually be able to play in terms of depth for the first couple rounds. But yeah, it could be really challenging if Austin advances to succeed in multiple competitions on multiple levels.
Yeah, and so the bracket is already out. So if Austin were to advance past that first round, they would face the winners of Tauro, which is a team from Panama, and then León from Mexico. And so there's a decent chance we would be up against Mexican competition, which for the last many, many years until this year have won this competition every time. It's always a Mexican team that wins it. And so we would be facing tough competition right then and would need to dedicate time and minutes and resources to competing in this if we actually plan on doing it. So if you do make it into that second, third round, Seattle Sounders fans will tell you that like you have to make a choice. It's very hard for MLS teams to compete on both fronts just because, I mean, for many reasons, but because it's the salary capped league, depth is almost impossible to achieve to the point where you can compete on multiple fronts like this. And so Seattle chose to go for the CCL glory, and luckily they achieved it. It made it worth the struggle, but they were so far behind in the table by the time that tournament was over that they could not catch back up. And also João Paulo, one of their best players, tore his ACL in the final of that tournament and was out for the whole season. And so they really did sacrifice their season to be successful in this tournament. And so that worries me a little bit for a team that was not the deepest already. It makes me a little nervous that we're going to have to be fighting on two fronts.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think for me, if I had to make that choice, I would make the choice to focus on the league. 'Cause it just seems like Austin is not deep enough or strong enough to make a kind of run in the CONCACAF Champions League that Seattle did.
Any other CCL notes we need to hit?
No, let's go ahead and go to break, and then we're going to talk to Marcelo. Like, this is one of the things that I most fear is going back at the end of the year and trying to reflect on our predictions and see how we did. So I just hope that we weren't that bad.
Yeah, and so we talked about some of the off-season things, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that with Marcelo, but I think because next week's episode is just before free agency, maybe we can spend a little more time on maybe some of the players that we have our eye on in that show and some of these other like dates that are going to be coming up. But for now, we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back with Marcelo and see how well we did earlier this year.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Property Group.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, you should talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Property Group.
You can find Sage Wilson Property Group at sagewilson.com.
And as always, Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And I learned last week that it was last Friday was like Love Your Lawyer Day, and I don't know what you get your favorite lawyer for Love Your Lawyer Day, and obviously we did not buy anything for the folks at FVF Law, but like, I want to send this note of appreciation and thanks to the FVF folks because, you know, they deserve something. They're great. They're awesome. Like, what would you get your favorite lawyer, Landon?
Oh,
Maybe like a little like the what is the scales of justice like tabletop thing, or like a bobblehead scales of justice. I feel like that you should get. You should definitely like find one of those and get it for your favorite lawyer. And if we can, we'll get it for the folks at FEF.
I'm gonna Google that as soon as we finish reading this ad. But you can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law.
Support for Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's grooming. Their products are precision engineered. Kevin didn't love reading this, but they're precision engineered tools for your family jewels. You can join Manscaped and take advantage of the exclusive offer, which is 20% off and free shipping with the code VERDE at manscaped.com.
So, Jeremiah, I went on a beach vacation, as I mentioned in the intro of the show. I feel like there was a point in my younger days when I talked about last time we read this ad. I'm a hairy man. I have been from a young age, but I feel like there was a moment in my life where kind of the shape and the form of my chest hair specifically could be considered by some as like an attractive kind of thing.
This is very personal. I like it. Go ahead.
Like there's like I don't know, just like there's a form to it. And maybe some people are into that. As I've gotten older, that form has gotten a little looser. And so this is where a Manscaped lawnmower comes into play, especially when you're going on a beach vacation. That the back hair gets a little longer. The chest hair starts to expand into places that maybe don't look as good as they did.
It doesn't need to be. I gotcha. Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed using the lawnmower with the guard on it because, again, like if I just start cutting down to the skin, then it's going to look weird. Because there's just going to be a very defined line of where I trimmed and where I did not. This guard gives me the option to kind of blend things in a little bit, make it look a little bit more natural, and maybe refine some of my glory of my younger days.
I'm so happy that you shared this with me and with everybody else that happens to be listening, including people that you see like on a regular basis from day to day, which is the best part about reading these ads.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah. So you can get 20% off and free shipping with the code VERDE at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code VERDE. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
All right, we are back and we are joined by our friend. He is a filmmaker, an educator, an Argentine, and an active member of the Austin FC fan community. He is Marcelo Tezon. Marcelo, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I like the active member, like the understated active member, which I
do you think that doesn't go far enough?
Active is carrying a lot of weight in that description.
So you did us a huge favor earlier on in the season and essentially planned a whole show for us. And so we owed you one for that already. And now we owe you two because you've now planned half of this show. And so anytime we don't have to do work and don't have to plan a show, then we're happy people. And so thank you again for doing this. But
it's my pleasure. I used to have a second job working on the weekends teaching SAT. And I left that job finally after many years. My wife begged me to like have your weekends back. But I'm such a workaholic that I just spend that time coming up with doing other people's work for them. So.
And so now you're counting how many times Austin FC gave up a goal playing out of the back instead.
Something like that.
Yeah. So for those people that didn't maybe listen to the first show, do you want to go ahead and set this up a little bit, Landon?
Sure.
Or Marcelo, go for it.
Yeah, let Marcelo do it.
Yeah, Marcelo. Oh yeah, and
so,
give us the background too. Where did this come from? Because this is not an original idea completely, I don't think.
No. So my other big fandom, and I apologize in advance to all the UT fans out there, is USC football because I'm a USC alum, and the USC podcast that I listen to does this thing every week where they, in addition to the kind of score predictions and figuring out what the offense will do, what the defense will do, they also do this kind of like over under thing where they say like, okay, here are some interesting stats and interesting ideas and storylines going on throughout for this game, and we're going to set a line and we're going to guess whether it's going to be over or under. And I always really liked it because it allows like there's the story of the game, which is like the score, but then there's also these kind of overarching stories of like the season and like how this person is doing here, or like little quirks. And like if you like the over underlines tend to be, especially the season long ones, kind of give people something to like hang on to as they're watching the whole season and notice things that they can notice about, like, oh, we're constantly doing this. How many times are we going to do that this season? And so setting those, and so all of these were based at the time on what I thought were going to be interesting storylines or continuations of storylines from last year. A lot of them didn't pan out that way, but still got we still have some good ones coming up, and I'm excited for next year. Next year, I can already spoil the next year. The first one's going to be over under goals in the first 10 minutes against us. So
I love that.
we're gonna see. Yeah, we're gonna see how whether we improve on that. So that's like a storyline you can think of if you're not just, if you want to track more than just like, do we win or lose? You can use these over unders to like think about like what are the overarching kind of threads that might lead to those results.
And I think it's theoretical pundits. I feel like the last thing you should do is ever look back on your predictions. So I'm really, really scared about how this is going to go, but excited at the same time.
Less Felipe Martins laminates them.
I will say this: both of you were above 500. So
I will say we'll get into this. Some of them we technically got right, but we're still way off.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to jump into it then?
Let's do it. So the first line, and this is one that I think I set kind of poorly because I didn't quite understand what's going on. But the first line was 17.5 starts by Musa Jite. And my thinking was that with Ruti and Hosen still on the squad, would Jite start the majority of the games, like that was above half, or would Ruti start the majority of the games? And you both immediately were like under, both of you immediately, like you correctly read that Jite was going to be our number 2, if anything. And it was under. He started 3 games total. But very interestingly, like he started the last 2, including the playoff games. Including the last playoff game. So I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on like Jite making a late starting push.
I would say like if you'd have asked us this like mid-season or whatever and gave us another line about just like how many more games will Musa Jite play in, I think we would have gotten it wrong, because he really did kind of come back into the team and kind of find favor with Wolf later on in the season. And I think there was lots of games early on in the season, if I'm not mistaken, where he wasn't even making game day squads. And so, I think we maybe got it right that he wasn't going to start so many games, but then he kind of like turned it back around later on.
Well, I think that
that hat trick really did wonders for him.
That did too. I was going to say, and Maxi not scoring in the last 10 matches did wonders for him too. Like Maxi had the very, very, very typical Maxi season where he was super hot early on and then went super cold. I guess he didn't launch as many balls into the stands as people thought, but other than that, like that's kind of, you got what you get out of him.
I think the interesting thing is that it wasn't just that like, Musa proved his worth or like showed. It's like I think everyone started to wake up to the different type of play that he brings to the field. And I think once the team started to realize, and Wolf realized, like, oh, it's not about who's better or worse. It's about, well, when we play Maxi, we can play this, and when we play Musa, we can play this, and we can tailor our play in a way that can be beneficial to us. And I think that's when it really started to open up for him. All right. The next one, and I'm proud of this one because this line ended up being pretty close. The line was 299.5 total season minutes, not including the preseason, played by Danny. What was the pronunciation? Is it Husen or Hosen? Because in the episode, you said Husen in the episode before, but people still say Hosen.
So I think in the Dutch pronunciation, it's like somewhere in between the two.
It's like a Husen?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say Husen. He had 311 minutes last season, and then he was pulled after 5 games or whatever it was and didn't play again. And so the question was, would he contribute at least the amount that he was playing before? Landon, you said over. Jeremiah, you said under. And it was over.
Oh.
It was actually over his previous season's total. He was 374 minutes. So not total, like not completely I don't know how many games he played in, but he played a similar number of minutes, considering, and what I like to call the Hosenaissance.
So the reason why I went with over seemed to bear out throughout the season. So I just figured he's going to be healthy this year, or we thought he was going to be healthy. Therefore, he would just be available to play more minutes, because all 300 whatever minutes he'd played last year were in the first 5 games. And so just the fact that he's on the roster and would be on the roster for the whole season, I figured he would get that much time, and that's what ended up happening. He ended up playing in 14 games this year and started 3 times.
Well, hopefully he gets more minutes wherever he ends up
next year.
Yeah, farewell. I really liked that story of him coming back and like his contribution to the DC game, that first big comeback is just it's the stuff of legend. And I think all Austin FC people and fans should be grateful for that moment, and like shake. He should, when you see him on the street, you say thank you for that game. All right, this is my favorite one.
All right.
No, I'm sorry. There's one before that. Sorry. Okay. This next one, 69.5 shots taken by Maxi Urruti. And he took 78 shots in Houston. He was shooting all over the place. And the question was, would he shoot as much? And you both said under. It was under. But Jeremiah, I imagine Landon looked this up. But Jeremiah, do you want to guess where it was?
I would guess it's 58 shots. 10 shots under.
58 is exactly right.
Holy smokes, and I did no preparation. Go me.
58 is exactly right. He took 58, which is more than I thought it would be, because the way you guys talked about it in the episode, you thought, okay, he's going to really calm down a little bit, and there's going to be other parts of his play that we're going to see. He's not just going to take random shots everywhere.
I think I re-listened to the show last time, the first time we did all these, and I think one of the points that I made, like one of the reasons I said it was going to be under, is because I thought he would play fewer minutes and in fewer games because of the kind of the striker competition, which ended up not being true. He played more games this year than he did for Houston last year. And so it was not necessarily because he's playing fewer minutes. It was just because he was not getting as many shots away.
He played fewer games in Houston and had 78 shots in those fewer games.
I believe that's true. Yeah. Cause
Wow.
he played in 32 games this year.
Okay.
Wait, so where are we at now?
Yes.
So Landon's got 3 and I've got 2. Sorry, I'm going to keep score as we go along.
I have the score tallied. I'm going to reveal. You guys can follow along if you want to on your own tallies.
Okay.
So I don't know where we are yet, but here we go with my favorite line, my favorite prediction from both of you is this one, 3.5. And I just picked that number because it felt like a good, like not just one, but a little more than one goals by Rodney Redis in any game. Preseason, friendly, didn't matter. Okay. And the question, he's healthy. He's had a year to get used to things. Does he awaken? Landon, you said over. Jeremiah, you said over.
What was wrong with me? That's like, I don't get that.
And it was under. My question is, does the one goal versus El Paso in the private friendly count?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is one goal in
you said any game.
Any game, but that was like a private like scrimmage. So the question of whether that actually counts as like a played game, but I'm going to count it, because if it was like, if he had 3 goals and this would have taken him over the line, that would have been an amazing debate whether the El Paso goal like is the counts. But Rodney,
I loved in the press conference after that game, Wolf almost didn't want to say who scored.
like George Costanza with a flout.
Yeah. All right, what else we got?
2.5 regular season games in which Brad Stuver is not the goalkeeper. He missed 2 games last year. There were 2 games that he didn't play. Landon, you said over, and I remember in the episode you mentioned like, injury could happen, something could happen there. You go over. Jeremiah, you said under, and it was over. The injury cost him 4 games.
Wow, I don't remember.
Oh, he had COVID one game as well.
Oh, he had COVID one game too.
One
okay.
or 2.
So injury cost him 3 games and then COVID. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, it was over. Not that much over, but like that was I love it when you guys split, because it's also fun to see the debate on that one. This one, I'm sad that this one ended up the way it was. This next one, I was really hoping to see this one happen. 1.5 players called up from the academy, and Owen Wolf counts as the first. And in subsequent, if we do this line again, he's not going to count anymore. He's a fully fledged grown man.
He's a professional.
Now.
Yeah,
he is a professional. He's graduated from the academy. But the idea was, would anyone else other than Owen Wolf get called up to play in for the first team? And Landon and Jeremiah, you both said over. You both thought Micah Burton would get the call, and it was under. It was just Owen Wolf.
Yeah, I've made this little prediction several times over the last year that I really did think that we would see another homegrown signing this year, at least one, if not multiple, and still nobody yet. So, yeah, got that one wrong. But I'm curious if they're waiting to maybe see who they think is going to be playing for the next pro team. And
that could be it. I was thinking that it was also like maybe like because of their success, it kind of took them by surprise and they don't have to rush anyone in to like reinforce anything.
Yeah, so. There didn't seem to really be a spot for a lot of them. And plus it's the academy is it's a young academy. The oldest players are still mostly 16 years old. And so, yeah, and I mean, it was an unlikely thing for any of them to really make a difference on the first team, but I kind of assumed, like, I don't know, the El Paso game or like one of the friendlies. I thought maybe somebody would get a run out, but yeah, it never happened.
Yeah, the Atlas friendly is the one I was thinking about, which kind of ties back into the Tigres friendly last year, which that match was a disaster for many reasons, and thank God nobody else saw it except for like the 4 people who were in the press box that took it in. But I thought we might see somebody there where it didn't matter. But yeah, I'm a little bit surprised, but I think that's, like you said, probably a function of the success of the club this year that we weren't calling in academy players.
Did Micah have a good year generally, Landon?
Yeah, I mean, he got 2 or 3 U17 national team call-ups, was one of the best, if not the best player on the U17 team when he was actually a U16 at the time. And so, yeah, he had a great season. It wasn't for him not being good as a youth player. It's just, I think it's a lot of these guys don't look at least like physically ready to be playing first team minutes. Whenever I go watch them play, they still look like 16-year-olds. And so they're very, very good and talented 16-year-olds, but they look like 16-year-olds. So I just don't know, even in the next year or so, how many of these guys are really going to be in a position to be any type of role player in this team yet.
All right. The next one, I might need some help with the result on this one because I kind of did it by memory and I'm not quite sure if I got it right. But it's 2.5 soccer games hosted at Q2 that do not feature Austin FC. And the question is, would we still host some other matches? Before I tell you what you guys predicted, can we count and come up with an actual result? So I know we're doing the Bundesliga match in like real soon, and that's going to count for this season. I think we had didn't we have a Liga MX game as well? Like 2 different clubs.
We did.
I think so.
It was like, wasn't it like Monterrey versus somebody? I don't even remember.
I can't remember, and it seems like a thing I should remember, but.
And then my question is, I remember, wasn't there a men's national one? Was it US versus Jamaica, or was that the year before?
That's what I was trying to remember, is which of these were last year and which were this year.
This is important because the line is 2.5. So if we assume that there's the Bundesliga match and the Liga MX match, the question of whether we hosted US versus Jamaica would take us above the line or below the line. So
okay,
I'm almost certain that was last year.
Yeah, because last year we did the Gold Cup semifinal versus Qatar. We had the women's team to open the stadium, and then was US versus Jamaica like the third one?
US and Jamaica was definitely the third one.
Okay.
And it took place.
Well, my notes say we hosted 3 last year.
October 7th, 21. So
okay, so that was last year. Okay, so we only had 2 then. We had the Bundesliga match and the Liga MX match. Although if someone in Slack decides to correct us, Seth, if you're there, or someone who knows everything,
Seth or some other random person.
But you both said under, and it was under. If it's 2, it was under. If it's 3, it was over. So you both said under. So you both get the point.
All right.
That I love that Q2 has become kind of a little bit of a destination for random. Bring on the Argentines. Bring on River.
Yeah, let's do it. I think there was supposed to be an Argentine team coming, right? And they got canceled.
I would have loved that. I really doubt my team is Racing, and I really doubt that they're going to come and play. I would freak out if Racing came and played.
I mean, you wouldn't have guessed that these German teams are going to come, right? So maybe, who knows?
All right. Next one. Okay, this one was interesting. Because I was thinking about this completely wrongly. And I think on the podcast, you guys also thought about, we both all thought about, we had an assumption in this one that didn't quite pan out, which is, this is 9.5 starts by Julio Cascante. And we were operating out of the assumption that Gabrielson and Romagna were the starting center backs.
Yeah.
And no one questioned this. So the question was, how many times does Cascante start? And it was obviously way over. He had 29 starts. Lan and Jeremiah, you were both over, but I'm curious to ask you guys, what did you think of, like, what were you thinking number-wise in terms of when you went over?
I can't remember exactly what I was thinking, but the way I talked about it on the show, it sounded like I didn't think it was going to be much over the 9.5.
Are we surprised by how little Romagna played? I mean, he had an injury.
I mean, so I think we were taking his performances towards the end of the season last year and kind of extrapolating that forward, expecting him to stay on that trajectory. And then preseason came and he did not look good. He looked unfit. He had some injuries that kind of kept him out a little bit. And from that point forward, I'm not surprised at all. But had you told me at that point that this is what was going to happen, yeah, I would have been surprised.
Yeah, I felt like it was going to be a kind of a rotation among the three, and yeah, I agree. Romagna seemed like the guy going into the more solid of the two center backs going into the offseason, and I'll just call myself out for no reason that I have to have, but like I wasn't super excited about Ruben either. Like I was kind of negative on that signing, and I was very, very wrong because like he's been our best center back, and I love the guy, so I'm very happy to be wrong about that. But that was the other part that went into it for me.
Yeah, he's delightful. Like, just a delightful guy. Like, I met him at the player signing. He was great.
Yeah, he's the best.
All right. This one was one I'm glad this was not a storyline, but it was something I was curious about, was 1.5 red cards issued to Alex Ring. And if you recall last season, Alex was getting into a lot of trouble. He was getting a lot of red cards, a lot of double yellows, just from his frustrations and the question about whether or not he would calm down or whether he would get some help in the midfield because he wouldn't have to do as much. You both said under, and it was under. He had no red cards. He didn't even have yellow card accumulation. He didn't have to miss a game at all because of yellow card accumulation. So yay, Alex, for being on good behavior. Unlike some people, I don't mention any names. I don't want to embarrass Danny Pereira.
We're proud of you, Alex.
Whoever that guy might be. Yeah, I was surprised. He was up against the line on accumulation at least once. I think he was at 4 at some point. Because there was at one point where all 3 potential defensive midfielders were on 4 cards, and yeah, he managed to keep it together and play smart from there.
He got his early. Remember, he was on accumulation and then like good behaviored his way down to like 2 or something, and then ended the season with 7 total. And so he actually did pretty good. And but yeah, I think you're right. I think like the state of the season and the fact that he had a little bit of help, like someone that could come on and somewhat replace him if he needed to come off this season, which wasn't the case last year.
Yeah. All right. This one I thought was really interesting. Also how it turned out because of the circumstances of the team, they could have gone either way. And this was 9.5 appearances by Kip Keller. The reasoning it was so high at 9.5 is because Danny Pereira, when he was picked in the Super Draft, he played 25 games that first season he was picked for the Super Draft because Austin needed him. The question was, would we feel the same way about Kip Keller, that he's like a first rounder? He's clearly a talented guy. Will he appear? And I was like, well, maybe let's say less than half, because normally Super Draft people don't appear that often in that first year. They work their way in over time. And so the question was, would Kip Keller appear in fewer than half of Danny Pereira's number? So 9.5 was where the line was set. Landon, you said over. Jeremiah, you said under, and it was under. It was 6 appearances. And I want to make a note here that I noticed this. Like, Landon, I feel like a theme that I was hearing throughout the episode when I listened back to it was you really thought that Josh would rotate players a lot more than he ended up doing. He really kept to the people he trusted, and he didn't do a lot of rotation, even when he didn't need to, even when you felt like, oh, this is like the Wednesday game, or this is like this game. Like, he really did not rotate that much. It was not a platooning system.
Yeah, I think I overestimated that part, but I think also 2021 maybe conditioned me a little bit to just expect to have 5 guys on the injury list every game. And we really were pretty lucky with injuries this season and weren't forced to rotate as much as we were last year, where a lot of times it was like, who has a pulse? All right, you're starting tonight. And it wasn't the case this year, so he didn't have to rotate him. But I probably should have done a little bit better minutes math, though, when I'm saying that all 4 center backs are going to be playing X number of minutes. I'm like, okay, this math stops working at some point, and I didn't quite catch that in the moment.
Well, I mean, we did have that 3 center back game last year against, what was it? At least at Colorado. So maybe
how many center backs actually played though?
Maybe that's I think it might have only been one. What, Nick
one
Lima
of them was
one
Alex
of them.
Ring.
One was Alex Ring. That's true. That's true. Yeah, I feel like you're probably right that a lot of the answers were tempered by what a season of chaos 2021 was, and not expecting us to be that much better in 2022.
We're all learning as we go. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, I up until Austin FC, I was more of a casual soccer person. Like, I understand the game and I kind of follow the big storylines, but like, I wasn't sitting here like following a team like closely. I haven't done that in a very long time. So this is kind of new for me too. Like, I think a lot of fans, especially in this team, are learning what it's like to go year after year after year after year. I hate to say 100-year war, but
yeah. No.
Something that was interesting.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, how many more questions do we have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
6 more.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Something that was interesting is that before Gabrielson arrived, because Gabrielson walked out onto the field during the Atlas preseason game and waved to the crowd, and then Keller started those first few games, and he looked very promising. At one point, Landon, I think something like you said, like, is he our best center back at this point? Like, because Cascante and Romano were playing poorly, but it was funny because I went to that first game against Cincy with my cousin from Argentina, Roberto, who was in town. I was like, we're gonna go to this game, and and I was like, this is the new guy, this is the new young defender that we picked in the draft, and he's very promising. And Roberto took one look at him and was like, I see it, but he tries too hard. Like, he's like, he tries too hard. Like, Roberto read him completely. Like, he tries too hard. He doesn't collect the ball efficiently yet. He doesn't quite know where he needs to be. He's got promise, but he needs the subtlety and the finesse and the confidence of sort of the intuitive knowledge and the intuitive skill that someone like Gabrielson has, who can just like calmly recycle the ball and position it and set up the play.
Yeah, and I think that everything Roberto said became very obvious over the next handful of games. So, yeah, good eye on him.
And yet I don't feel the same way about Kip and those early games than I do about Cascante and the way Cascante has given up things. Like Kip's play was kind of sloppy and difficult sometimes and a little bit like tense to watch, but he never like gave us a howler, did he?
No, it was like things that could have been that ended up like he got a toe to it, or somebody cleaned up a mess or something. And so I don't know that he ever really did give us a howler, but there were just several moments where like, okay, buddy, you need to reel it in a little here. And then I think the thing that kind of started to change my opinion on him was, watching is something your cousin said about him on the ball. Like, you watch Gabrielson and Cascante on the ball, and they're both very clean. They're pretty deceptive with their passing and their movement, and they'll look off a pass, or like they'll point to an area to a player that's not there just to get a center back thinking about going one way, and they'll turn and pass the other way. And Kippy was always very much like, okay, make sure the ball's still on my foot, look up directly at Alex Ring, play the ball directly to Alex Ring. And there was none of that that suaveness or like the deception on any of it. And so that's something that he definitely needs to get better if Josh Wolf is going to trust him to be one of those like quarterback style center backs like he asks those guys to play.
All right. Here is now if the Rodney Redis goal line was my favorite, this one is the saddest one because this is the one I wanted to see happen the most, and it did not happen. 0.5 goals by Johan Romagna.
Oh man.
And this was basically because I remember at the end of that season, he would take those Romagna runs, and just lumber his way all the way through the defense. And when we were desperately chasing a game, he'd get in on the corner boxes and you'd see it just so close, and everyone wanted him to score. Like the whole stadium was just like willing him to score, and he didn't do it. And so the question was, would he get one? And Landon, you said over, and Jeremiah, you also said over.
Well, we said that out of
lack
love.
Of time was
we said that out of love.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I love the guy. His lack of playing time to me was one of the saddest things about this season. I understand it. Like I get that he wasn't fit and he was injured, and then these other guys really took the spots. But man, I love that guy. I love his attitude. I love his play style. He's deceptive. He seems like this lumbering galoot who doesn't know who kind of looks like, but he knows what he's doing a lot of the times. He's deceptively faster than he looks. And I really enjoy his attitude on the pitch and his attitude among the teammates. He seems just like this really nice guy that I really want to see get even better.
Yeah, totally agree. As critical as I am of his play, one of my favorite things on this whole team is to watch him close down a guy who just received the ball and just bulldog him and just bully a guy off the ball. I love watching him do that, even though he worries me when he's on the field most of the time.
Yeah. I fun note is Gabrielson did a few of those runs this year. I think he one or two of them. One of them was the Musajite third hat trick goal, or was it? Yeah,
the third
was
goal.
Just Gabrielson running all the way up, and I think he did another one at one point. I don't know if that one led to a goal, but Gabrielson it was interesting to see. I think there was this kind of theme of when it's Gabrielson and Romagna, when it's Gabrielson and Cascante is the more offensively minded defender, and Gabrielson kind of cleans up if anything goes wrong. And when it's Gabrielson and Romagna, Romagna is the more defensive-minded person, and Gabrielson becomes more aggressive. And I actually really like that in Gabrielson's game, and I hope we get to see more of it next year.
Yeah, I mean, if a lot of people would like to see Cascante replaced in the starting lineup, and if it ends up being just a more physical center back, then I wouldn't have any problem with Ruben stepping into the more ball playing position and having the other person be the defensive minded one. So yeah, I think he can do it.
I also think it'd be cool to have, I think this is kind of true already, but the idea of having the two defenders being able to switch off and take turns being we shouldn't, it shouldn't be a thing where one defender is clearly the one that these people have to watch out for, and this one is clearly the one that stays. But I'd love it to be more fluid. So hope they grow. All right, next one. This is the one where I may need help because I was not about to go and look at every single goal scored against us, but it was goals against that are a result of the defense giving the ball up while playing it out of the back. And I defined it weirdly. I defined it as any goal that the other team scores where we start playing it out of the back and it never reaches the midfield line. And I feel that's that's much more encompassing of goals as opposed to obvious when playing it out of the back goes wrong. There were two goals that we had this year that that were on the Twitter. But I set the line at 7.5.
Ooh. I couldn't remember what the line was, and I was going to say we definitely went over, but I'm not sure now.
Landon, you said over. Jeremiah, you said over, and I'm counting it as over. But I'm not sure if that's true, and I would love for some of this. And I put this out on the Slack in the Tactics Nerds sub channel. Can anyone give me a sense of this number? And I didn't get a response. So
I can remember at least one or two where Stuver could have booted it and instead tried to chip it over to a fullback.
Yeah, there was one where Stuver passed it poorly and I remember he took credit for it on Instagram. He's like, that was me missing a pass that I make all the time.
Yeah, I think you could put some of the Red Bulls goals in that category. At least one, if not two of the ones.
I'm sorry,
scored.
it's not 7.5. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's 3.5.
Oh, we went over
over
then.
It's over.
We're
No,
over.
okay. So on that one, Landon, you said under. I was looking at the wrong thing. Landon, you said under. Jeremiah, you said over.
I feel good about that. I feel like this is the one of all of these that I was like, thank God Marcelo is counting these, so I don't have to go back at the end of the year and figure this out. So apparently you weren't.
I kind of
so,
made a mental
gotcha.
note every time. So yeah, it was over 3.5. It was over 4 goals for sure. So Landon, you said under. Jeremiah, you said over. Okay. I wasn't reading. I wasn't reading the right line. Now I'm reading this line. The 7.5 is, and this one's, I didn't look at these, but it's a very clear one. Goals scored by Austin FC from crosses into the box, including corners and free kicks. And the 7.5, and that number is very specific because in 2021, the Striker did an analysis of where are our goals coming from? Where are we scoring from? Or where are we not? And one of the things they found is that like the place where our goals were not coming from was crosses and set pieces, that almost all our goals were coming from forward. Only one was from a set piece, and then only 2 were from crosses. All the rest were from other things. And so if you multiply that ratio by 35 total goals, that's what we scored the entire season of 2021. That number is so low. You get 8 total goals. So if you think about that ratio, like, okay, 3 out of 13 means 8 out of 35. Okay, well, I'm going to set this line at 7.5, and I'm going to say, like, are we good? And the idea is, are we going to get better? And we got way better. Landon, you said over. Jeremiah, you said over. It was unbelievably over. I believe, didn't we lead MLS in goals from set pieces this season? At some point we did.
Yeah, I think it was like 17 or something like that, the way that MLS counts it. And then I think Josh Wolf, he said that him and his staff will count like the second phase of set pieces as well. And so the number was even higher if you count those.
And my line was set not just goal corners and stuff. It was crosses.
Yeah. So I mean, even just like the way MLS counts it, it's got to be like pushing 25, if not more than that.
Yeah. Yay team for real improvement. Real improvement. Because I think it's wild how much that stat really improved. That was great.
Absolutely.
All right. This one was interesting, and I actually originally measured this incorrectly, and I thought it was one side, but it ended up being the other side for obvious reasons. It was 299.5 total combined season minutes, not preseason, played by trialists, by current trialists at the time of the show. And last year, we relied on trialists like Mackenzie Gaines to fill in positions of need, and I kind of guesstimated their minutes. And add them up a little bit, and I was like, "Well, are we going to need to run this year? Will there be one breakout trialist star?" Landon, you said over. Jeremiah, you said over, and it was way over because we had a breakout trialist star in Felipe.
Yeah, young guy.
No, but we said in the show that we're not counting Felipe.
Oh no,
we're not. Did we say that in the show? I listened back. I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if we're not counting Felipe, it was under because Charlie Asensio played like 10 minutes.
No, he didn't play any.
Wait, he didn't play any?
No, zero.
He played
zero MLS minutes. Yeah,
he put on zero MLS minutes. He appeared at one point.
Maybe in a friendly, but I don't know that he ever even suited up for a game.
I remember he put on a jersey at one point.
Yeah, it was the Pachuca. I remember you saying you started reading it on the podcast, or I started reading that question on the podcast, and then I was like, oh, like we smashed this. Felipe did that by himself, and then we decided to exclude Felipe because I don't know why, but I guess maybe I don't know why we decided to exclude him. But
this changes the score a little bit. This actually changes the score because Landon, you said under, and Jeremiah, you said over, and so that's going to change the count, which is actually really sad for me because I was really excited about it's going to change the result.
Change the outcome. Oh man,
yeah.
You said I said under?
You said under.
I'm almost positive I said over on that one.
I'll give you. I can give you over, and then we can keep the result that we have.
I don't deserve the point. I'm almost positive I said over because I was expecting Charlie Asensio to factor into this season.
All right then. Next one, we have 2 left, and this one was kind of interesting because y'all. What happened was I set this line and sent it to you, and then something happened in between that made you on air change the line. And it was games in which John Gallagher plays left back or right back because he filled in once in 2021 and did okay. And we remember we were worried about his safety because he just kept getting just brutalized.
Oh, right, by Kansas City.
Yeah, and then it was like, well, maybe he could be an option if we need it, really. And does he want to? Does he want to be a forward? And then he played in some preseason stuff, and it was very clear that he was going to be the guy. That's where he was going to play for a while. And so Landon and Jeremiah, you both said over on the new line. I had 1.5. I was like, is it more than one game? And you all said, and you're like, well, let's set it to a higher number. Let's set it to 7.5. And it was way over 7.5. He did the entire that transition is a remarkable story. My only sadness about it is there was only one or two times where he really came up and like joined the attack even more, and he got a goal at one point. And I really would love to see him be more fluid in his play. Like I would love to see us use him in different capacities if he's available to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with just Wolf asking the fullbacks not to do that as much this year and kind of tuck in a little bit more. But I think this over-under says as much about how surprising and overperforming John Gallagher was based on expectations as much as it does about how disappointing Jean Kolmanich was, because I was expecting him to be the guy this year.
Yeah, it was cool, Jean coming in every now and then to provide crossing finesse, and that seemed to work in certain games, but I'm surprised we didn't see more out of John, especially since he had to step in so abruptly in 2021. He did pretty well. But yeah, I think Gallagher came in and he's like, I'm going to lock this spot down, and he locked it. Very simple. All right, the last one, because the other thing is with over-unders, especially with football, especially with American football, where it's like all these stats and yards per carry, and it's such a statty thing, is every now and then you got to have one that has nothing to do with the sport and more to do with like the lifestyle. And I'm going to try to think of some others in the same, but this one was 2.5 different Driussi hairstyles. So he had two last year. He had his shaved sides with kind of a mohawk horse thing. And then he grew it out a little bit and got very preppy. And then he started the season with a kind of a very close almost shaved head thing. And so the question was, how many more would he have? Landon, you said over. Jeremiah, you also said over, and it was over. He had 3. He had the shaved head. He went back to the mohawk, and then he grew out the sides, and it looked like that. I like to call it he has the hairstyle that Jerry Seinfeld has when he has the bad haircut from the barber, where it's all combed really close. Like that's the hair that Driussi has at the end of the day. Like it's such a perfectly parted, preppy Jerry Seinfeld barber look.
That's that's haircut he had when we met him, right? Landon? Is that when we met the Queen? That was his hair. That was his Queen haircut.
He put on the conservative hair for the Queen. That's what it is. All right, those are all our lines, and I've been keeping track of this because the score changed for different things. But if I'm gonna let me do a quick double check. Okay. I think I'm right. I may be wrong, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, because I really want to do what I have. Originally, I counted it multiple times, and it was a tie. and I have a tiebreaker set up.
It's a tie.
Let's call it a tie. Let's call it a tie.
Yeah, I want to do the tiebreaker. But I think though, if I'm counting correctly, that Landon wins 10-6 versus Jeremiah's 9-7. 9-7. So 10-6, 9-7. But I had you both at 9-7 originally. So I think one of the adjustments, I have to double check it, but if someone's listening and they're like, "Hey, that's where I have it," but I want to do the tiebreaker.
We're playing whose line is it anyway rules. Yeah. Do whatever is more interesting.
Go for it.
So here's the final tiebreaker, because Landon, you added an over/under of your own for Jeremiah to guess, and it was what is the average age of the team? At the time that we had that team. And I have recalculated the average age of the team, and I have it here. And I'm going to give you some numbers, but here's how this game is going to work, because if I set the line and you both pick the same thing, that wouldn't break the tie. So the way this is going to work is one of you is going to set the line and the other one gets to pick over under. So the person setting line really has to think about where they want to set that line and see if they can set it in a way that gets them the pick. And then the other person picks over or under and then locks the other. So if I set the line at a certain number and Landon picks over, that locks me into under. Okay. So it's my job to set the line in a way that it could be either or.
And so what's our smallest increment here?
All right. Decimal points, tenths.
Tenths. Okay.
One decimal point. So I'll give you the previous line, Landon, that you set was 25.5, and the actual previous age was 25.3. I am now not going to say anything else. That was last year. The lineup has changed. I am not including Cecilio because he's gone. I'm talking about everyone who is on the roster. I am including the people who were let go today. So, but as of yesterday or the day before. So I have the actual number, and so who wants to set the line?
I think because I did actually win, then
Yeah.
I want to make Jeremiah set the first line.
Okay,
you're gonna make me set the
Jeremiah,
line.
set the line and try to set it in a reason. Try like, because if you set it like 12, Landon's gonna take the over and you're gonna lose. So you have to set the line.
Jeremiah can then we essentially does this at some point someone calls a bluff, or how does this work?
I don't know. Set a line and then Landon pick your side, and then
I'm gonna take the other side.
Yeah. So again, the previous line that Landon set was 25.5, and the previous age was 25.3.
I'm going to go with 25.1.
25.1 is your new line. Landon over under 25.1.
Okay, so if I pick one, then Jeremiah has to take the other. Oh, yeah. It's over. It's over.
Do you feel like Jeremiah set that line way too low?
It was too low because we added several 30-plus-year-olds in the offseason after that moment, I believe.
The actual age of the average age of the team is 26.19.
Jeez.
It has gone. It went up
a year, or almost a year.
It went up almost a year. Yeah, because we added Felipe. We added Felipe. We added Ruben. We added Rigoni, who's 29, I think. And Ruben's in his 30s. And Rodney grows like the growing boy that he is. But yeah, this is it's going to be really what was interesting to see. It's interesting to see like what the storylines that we thought would be important were versus what they ended up actually being important. And then next year, those will be the lines, and then we're going to have whole new stories. So that'll be really exciting to see going forward. But I love this stuff because it helped. I remember when I didn't know a lot about like a sport or a team, or I wasn't trying to figure it out, like stuff like over-unders helped me kind of get my head in the game and sort of pay attention to things on the field that I wouldn't have paid attention to otherwise.
No,
thanks for having me.
This was excellent, and I think you did a fantastic job of picking those storylines. So yeah, we'll definitely, if you're interested, we'll have to do this again.
I'm ready to pop in every. I'll bring my own soundbite. I'll bring like a soundbite board next time.
I love it.
We'll make it like a real sports talk, like extreme show.
What was the one of the Simpsons, weenie in the butt? That's what we're going to be like.
What's the meme? I saw a meme that was like every podcast duo is. And it was a picture. It was Nelson the Bully and Martin Prince skipping. Like this is every podcasting duo, and I'm curious, like which one of you is Nelson and which one of you is Martin Prince?
Oh, I don't think there's a Nelson. I don't think there's much Nelson in either one of us.
Wellhausen is Nelson.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm curious before I sign off. I'm curious. Are there any storylines, like just thinking about next year? Are there any storylines that you feel would be might be interesting over unders next year? They may or may not be included, but I'm curious to see like is there anything the one that I want to see is goals conceded in the first 10 minutes, like early goals.
That one would be interesting. I honestly think you could roll a couple of them over again and it would be equally as interesting. So at center back, like how much are some of these guys going to play? At striker, I know we didn't say like minutes from Maxi Ruti, but like starts from Musa Jite will be interesting. Shots from Maxi Ruti is kind of like a byproduct of minutes. And so that one would also be interesting. So I think a lot of them are kind of the same questions.
The one that I originally was going to include and didn't, because I didn't want to be too controversial for my first outing, was I originally I was going to have you guys go over under 1.5 head coaches employed by Austin FC to see if like, would we move on from Wolf? And now that's clearly not going to happen. So,
yeah, there's no doubt on that one now.
Yeah. That would have been under, but that was a question. I'm curious about like, I think there might be like, I wonder if there's like an over under. What would be the line on over under on new players before the first game?
Oh man,
over under on new players.
So we only have 20 on the whole roster right now, and we're allowed 30.
And does that include Poche?
It does.
It does. The 20 includes Pochettino?
It does.
Okay, so I would.
So,
I mean, you could say up to 10.
What's the maximum, and then we subtract?
It's 30, including
So
like
10.
your supplemental spot. So it could be 10.
Wow. Every year, it's a whole new group. That's like I love new players, man. It just gets me all excited. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having
All
me.
right, Marcelo, this was great. We'll definitely have you back again. Thanks so much for doing it. And yeah, look forward to talking to you soon.
You too. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, man.
I ain't got no time to let you pass. I only got one life, and it's gone too fast.
All right, we want to thank Marcelo one more time for helping us out and creating those over-unders for him. We'll definitely try to do that again before the next season starts. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you want to continue the conversation, come find us on Twitter at lviajero87 and jbentley_ATX. And then we're at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter and Instagram. And we'd also encourage you to sign up for the Patreon. We need to decide what these are going to be, but we do plan on doing more Patreon rewards for the upcoming year. So I think the plan is to just send people new rewards in the new year too. So maybe if you jump on now, you can. Should I be saying this?
Yeah, you can. Go for that. And then also the other thing I was going to say is like during the offseason, this is our chance to like re-examine the format of the show and the flow and the guests and things like that. And I think especially when it comes to talking about or asking about what people want to hear about during the offseason, Patreon is a great place to go to advice and figure out like what do people want to hear more of or less of, or what do people want to hear differently or whatever. So we're going to do a lot of audience research during the offseason on the Patreon. So please sign up and subscribe and help us shape the future of the show.
And we encourage you to visit the Striker website where you can get a 30% discount with the code MoonTower22 with a capital M, MoonTower22 with a capital M. There's going to be a lot of roster movement happening in the next few months. And as always, the Striker is going to be the best place to keep up with all of that. So definitely subscribe to them if you don't already. Thanks so much for listening. We're not going anywhere during the off season. I think if anything, this is when we're at our best is in the off season. So we'll definitely have a new episode next week and most weeks after this one. We may do a little bit of break and play an interview the week we take off. But yeah, we'll be around during the off season. So we'll see you next week. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente. Oh my God.